Dear students, welcome to the lecture 4 of week 1, which is Conceptual Foundations. Today we are going to discuss another important topic, that is exports prospects of our country. As we have been discussing over the course of our starting lectures, that exports and imports are very important economic contributor of the country. In line, today we are going to focus all our understanding on exports prospect of a country. Let us go through the contents of today's discussion. We will be having a brief introduction followed by factors that determines export prospects. After that, we will talk about the role of comparative advantage, followed by export potential analysis tools. After that, we will discuss the sector-wise export prospects, followed by case studies related to India, China, and Vietnam. Then we will talk about challenges in realizing export prospects as well as the strategies to enhance export prospects. And finally, we will conclude our lecture. Let us begin the journey. We all have been discussing exports. What are export prospects? Export prospects of a country is the potential to expand exports in a sustainable and competitive manner. Every country is involved in exports. However, exports prospects of a country reflect the capacity and the gap of that capacity with the current position. Suppose a country is exporting to this level, but the capacity of the export of that country is this level. It means the gap is the unutilized potential of the economy. Export prospects means the try to minimize this gap in such a manner that in the exports of the country should increase. Why export prospects are important? Because they guide trade and industrial policy. Export prospects informs investment decisions. It also supports long-term economic growth and employment. And export prospects of a country act as a foundation for integration into global value chains. Let us talk about the determinants of export prospects. Export prospects basically are dependent on four parameters. The first is natural resources and factor endowments. Every country is having some kind of abundance of resources. And this abundance of resource is very important to highlight and understand. For example, India is having abundance of human capital that can be properly utilized by the country. So export prospect depends on some natural endowment factors that are present in the country. For example, a country may be rich in certain type of raw material, it may be rich in terms of energy, or it may be rich in terms of land, which provides a different set of resources. So this is the first determinant of export prospects. The second determinant of export prospect is industrial capacity. Industrial capacity refers to manufacturing scale, productivity, and diversification. It is also very important to identify the industrial capacity of the country because based on it, export prospects are determined. Some countries have the capacity but it is underutilized. Other countries do not have the capacity. But realization of the same is very important to identify the export prospects. The third is skilled workforce, which is human capital. If a country has all the resources, industrial capacity, but lacks in human capital, then it cannot ultimately be efficient in manufacturing or producing goods or services. Thus, the role of human capital is very important. And this human capital refers to labor, skilled as well as non skilled, and even it includes the technical knowledge and innovation. All these things, when they come together, they are known as a skilled workforce for the country. Therefore, a skilled workforce is also an important determinant of export prospects. And the fourth and the final one is market access and logistics. Connectivity, ports, roads, infrastructure, custom efficiency, trade routes, etc. All these things comes under the market access and logistics. These are also very important because if markets are accessible and logistics support is provided in a country, then goods will flow easily in and out of that country. And therefore, the export import will be quite fast for these countries. This is also another important determinant of export prospects. Comparative and competitive advantage in exports is important to understand. We have already discussed, but let us just revise it that comparative advantage was given by Ricardo, which indicates countries should specialize in producing goods where they have lower relative opportunity cost. On the other hand, competitive advantage given by Michael Porter talks about something beyond cost, which includes innovation, branding, quality, supply chain efficiency, and government support. In terms of examples, if we see India, in terms of India, information technology services due to English speaking talent pool and cost efficiency. Similarly, the competitive advantage for Vietnam is in textile and electronics because there they can easily assemble electronics due to low cost labor and different types of free trade agreements that have been formed in East Asia that derive integration. Both concepts shape which products become export successes. Global demand trends is also one of the things to identify for. For example, there can be rising demand in different products. However, if we try to analyze the contemporary time, there is rising demand in digital service and cloud solutions, renewable energy technologies, pharmaceutical and healthcare products, and processed and organic food. This declining in demand is also witnessed in some of the products, such as some primary commodities, for example, the traditional textiles and coals. What is the implication? That the export prospects and strategy must adopt according to the shifts in demand and its consumption patterns. Another important parameter to look for exports prospects is domestic production capacity. There are four parameters to identify the domestic production capacity. Number one, infrastructure. What is the level of infrastructure? What about power? What about ports? What about transport system? If all three are good in the country, it means infrastructure is good and it will promote or increase the production capacity. The second is technology adoption, automation, and Industry 4.0. The artificial intelligence, machine learning, use of robotics, all these things, they are very important because they are now coming into the economy. Automation is also replacing the traditional way of doing things. What does it mean? That technology adoption is also an important parameter to identify the domestic production capacity in a particular country. The third important thing is quality standards. The quality standards are important to compete with the products at the international market. The product should be ISO certified, HACCP certified, which are the international certification. What happens with the help of these international certification, it depends at okay, what is the quantity of the goods that can be produced and sold at the international level. And finally, the productivity levels that are directly linked to cost competitiveness. If country A can produce a good at less cost than country B, the country A will have edge over country B. Thus, it is all about the cost competitiveness, which ultimately determines the domestic production capacity. The next is trade and policy environment, which also determines the export prospects, whether exports will be better or it will decline. This trade and policy environment is very important and interesting. The first point under it is tariff and non-tariff barriers. We know that tariffs are those type of taxes which is imposed in a quantitative form, particularly as percentage on goods being exported or imported, and non-tariff barriers are the qualitative barriers such as standard barriers, safety barriers, etc. So, high tariffs, quotas, and product standards can restrict market entry. That is why they will determine export prospects, whether we have to export to country X or not, whether we have to control export to country Y or not. For example, right now we see there is trade war between United States and China. Now what is happening is the tariffs are very high. So other countries, for example, can have edge by selling to US at cheaper rates. However, US is also targeting now India for tariffs. Therefore, this kind of policy environment is very important to determine the export prospects of a country. The second is bilateral and multilateral trade agreements. Bilateral and multilateral trade agreements are agreements that are formed by multilateral organizations like IMF, World Bank, IBRD, WTO, etc. Time and again, countries are going into agreements with other countries as well as with other organizations, such as FTAs are there, for example, India, EU FTA is there, India Dubai FTA is there, United Arab Emirates UAE FTA is also there. Now, these free trade agreements provide a relationship and understanding between two or more than two countries where they can talk about tariffs and they can cooperate in trade and investment. Regional trade agreements, such as we have an example of ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations. They have formed an agreement. And that particular regional trade agreement is very important because they all are trading together with less tariffs. WTO rules are also there, World Trade Organization rules, which are followed by most of the countries. And if there is any dispute settlement, they try to go to WTO forum and solve their problem. So this kind of environment also promotes trade and exports prospects of countries participating in such type of agreements increases. A country which has not participated in any of the agreement, the export prospects will be less. A country participating in more agreements, the exports prospects will be more. For example, India is participating in WTO. India is having several free trade agreement with countries, several bilateral agreements. India is also part of regional trade agreements, such as India is part of BRICS and other such things. So it is benefiting India's export prospects. The third is export promotion councils. These are the councils, organizations which work in the domestic economy and provide market intelligence. They organize trade fairs and assist firms in meeting compliance standards. They are also very important because they motivate the domestic exporters, the industries, to increase the exports, to evaluate and try to find out more opportunity in the international market. And the fourth is stable trade policy, which encourages long term investment and integration into global supply chains. The next important item is role of innovation and technology in improving the exports prospects of a country. The first thing is research and development driven exports. We know that investment in research leads to unique, high value products, for example, biotechnology, aerospace, etc. And because of this, the technological items can be exported to rest of the world. The second is e-commerce and digital trade. The digital trade parameters such as e-invoicing, e-bill of lading, etc. allow small and medium enterprises to reach to international markets without physical presence. Today, the physical presence of the company's office is not required in any other part of the country. Goods can easily transfer with minimized documentation, and most of the documentation can happen digitally, and that is providing and facilitating small and medium enterprises participating in exports. Just to take a case study, if we take case study of South Korea, South Korea achieved a remarkable feat by transitioning from an agricultural exporter to a high-tech powerhouse through innovation and industrial policy. Thus, innovation enhances not just competitiveness but also resilience to global shift. That is why innovation and technology play an important and integral role in exports prospects of a country. Let us now focus on two sectoral export prospects where the first sector we are taking agriculture. What are the potential areas where India has export prospects in terms of agriculture? We have organic fruits and vegetables, we have processed foods, packaged beverages, and ready to eat items, marine products like shrimp, tuna, and aquaculture exports is also a potential area where India can do wonders. However, there are certain challenges in these potential areas. There is high perishability, which requires cold storage and logistics. So, we need to improve the warehousing facilities in India. The second, compliance with sanitary and phytosanitary measures or standards. Now, this is very interesting. This is known as the SPS measures in the language of WTO, sanitary and phytosanitary measures. It These measures are the measures which talk about safety concerns of the flora and fauna and human beings. And this was generally used at the time of COVID 19 by developed countries. They didn't allow goods of developing countries to enter into developed countries by saying that they may not be safe, they may be containing this COVID 19 virus. And they had enacted this particular clause of sanitary and phytosanitary standard, the SPS measures. This is a non-tariff measure. So it is very important that because all these items which we have talked about, the potential areas, all these are consumables and their standards should be very proper. Otherwise, the developed countries will try to ban these products or not allow these products based on the sanitary and phytosanitary standards. The third is price volatility due to climate change and global demand fluctuations is also very important and it should be dealt with. Let us now move to the second sector, that is manufacturing sector. What are the different potential subsectors within manufacturing sector where India can do wonders? The first is engineering goods and machinery. We also have automobiles and components, electronics, semiconductors and consumer durables, and textiles and garments. However, there are certain requirements for these products to be successful in the international market, and these are scaling up production to global standards, building strong global brands rather than relying on contract manufacturing, and finally reducing dependence on imports for intermediate goods. Let us move to the third sector, that is the services sector. In services sector, India has been doing wonders as the contribution of service sectors toward GDP of the country has been increasing over the years. What are the leading areas where services can be exploited and utilized for more exports? Information technology, IT and ITES, that is information technology enabled services, and software outsourcing can be focused on. These are still the leading areas. Online education platforms and cross border higher education is a leading service area. Then tourism, where medical, cultural, adventure, and spiritual tourism is also there. You can also write the spiritual tourism part of this. And then healthcare services and telemedicine. It's a very big network in India, and that is also to be utilized. What are the emerging frontiers, emerging areas that can also be used for services exports and can also be considered, it can also act as a challenge if not properly dealt with? We have the financial technology services for global markets. We have artificial intelligence driven consulting, design, and analytics like BI, business analytics, and all. And the creative and cultural industries such as film, gaming, and digital content. Let us now see a case study of India in detail. What are the strengths of India? Information technology services are a strength where India has emerged as world leader in outsourcing and software exports. The second is in the pharmaceutical sector, India is a leading manufacturer of generic medicine and vaccines. Then gems and jewelry, India has a global hub for cutting and polishing of gems and jewelry. What are the challenges for India? The logistic and infrastructure inefficiencies. The different regional imbalances in logistics and infrastructure is present in India. That needs to be minimized. The second, fragmented manufacturing base and high cost of capital for exports. India illustrates a services driven export model but faces constraint in manufacturing led growth. So the need of the hour is that we have done very successful exporting and work in services sector, but we also now to focus more on manufacturing led growth. Let us see the case study of China. China's model is export led growth since 1980s, which it has adopted by several market reforms. The strengths of China include large scale manufacturing clusters, competitive pricing and cost efficiency, as well as strong supply chain linkages with global companies. The different policies which China has adopted, because of which it has achieved huge economic growth and export led market growth, is special economic zones, tax incentives, and infrastructure development. It has also applied the state backed credit and subsidies for exporters, and thus China has become the largest exporter globally by leveraging scale, efficiency, and proactive trade policy. The third case study, we have taken example of Vietnam. The key feature is that Vietnam is considered to be a major hub for electronics assembly. For example, Samsung and Intel uses Vietnam as a place where their parts are assembled. There is a strong presence in textiles as well, garments and footwear, because the labor cost structure is very competitive in Vietnam. The drivers of exports in Vietnam include proactive signing of free trade agreement such as CPTPP, the Comprehensive Trade Agreement, EU Vietnam FTA, European Union and Vietnam Free Trade Agreement. Then second important driver of Vietnam's exports is the heavy foreign direct investment inflows creating export oriented industries. And the third is the strategic location of Vietnam, which is near the ASEAN that is Association of Southeast Asian Nations and East Asian Supply Chains. Vietnam demonstrates how small economies can achieve rapid export growth through global value chain participation. Dear students, let us now try to analyze the challenges which are required in realizing export prospects. The first is global competition. If a country wants to become an emerging exporter, then it has to understand global competition. The second is protectionism. Rising tariffs, anti dumping measures, and localization policies are very important to deal with in order to realize export prospects. The third is quality and compliance. Non compliance with product standards can block market entry. Therefore, if a country wants to realize exports prospects, the quality and compliance should be considered properly and timely. The fourth is supply chain risk. Geopolitical conflicts, pandemics, or natural disasters disrupt trade flows, and therefore the supply chain risk should be identified and proper measures should be planned in case of any such disasters. And finally, the domestic bottlenecks, that is high cost of energy, logistics, and finance can sometimes minimize and decurtail the exports prospects of a country. What are the different strategies that are present to enhance export prospects? Diversification, where reduction on dependence on a few products or markets by exploring new opportunities. We also have trade facilitation, such as streamlined customs, digitalized processes, and upgraded logistics. Innovation and branding is also very interesting, which can build global brands and thus enhance exports prospect. Government support through export incentives, credit facilities, skills training, and infrastructure upgrades is also very important to enhance export prospects. And finally, sustainability, wherein developing eco friendly and socially responsible exports are required to meet the global ESG, that is, environment, social, and governance expectations. Dear students, whatever we have discussed, let us try to conclude. Today, we had discussed and highlighted the exports prospects, and we have reached to a conclusion that it depends on the synergy of domestic capabilities and global market opportunities. We have also understood that successful export strategies require long term planning, innovation, and institutional support. We have also identified that the future of exports lies in sustainability, which includes green exports and eco friendly production, digitalization, which includes electronic commerce and remote services, and integration into high value global value chains. With this, we can take a final note that countries that adapt quickly will secure stronger positions in the international trade system. Thank you very much for being with me in this session.